Hello, and welcome back to Hold On, I'm Talking Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood, and this is our preview of UFC 286, which is headlined by Leon Rocky Edwards versus Kamaru Usman for the welterweight title. With the co-main event of Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev in the lightweight division. That is a banger. Unfortunately, listeners, I am not joined by my regular co-host Tom Ballum. He is unable to join me for this preview. So I can only apologise on Tom's behalf for not being here. Don't worry, he's okay. He's fine. He just has very legitimate reasons for not being here, for which I am accepting of. But despite that, he is a champion, and he is still defending his title. He's emailed me his picks for UFC 286, so I will still go through those, and I will try and psychoanalyze them to the best of my abilities. So, listeners, this is going to be a slightly truncated episode of Hold On, I'm Talking Brother. I know that you come to expect the best from us, and frankly, you get that. You get that a good 20-30% of the time. But you know what? We will make the best of this situation. So, what's going to happen is that me and Tom are going to make picks for UFC 286 on the main card. And we're going to make picks for each fight. If we pick the fighter that wins the fight correctly, we get 1 point. And if we get the method correct, that's 2 points. 10 points on offer. We start at the main event. Leon Edwards defends the title for the first time against Kamaru Usman, the man he defeated back in August to claim the title. 5th round knockout. Incredibly dramatic. A moment that, jaw-dropping, mind-blowing. Doesn't even begin to do it justice. An incredible moment. And this sort of real, climbing the mountain moment for Leon. We all know the famous corner. We've all seen the Rocky montage. We know that John Anik, who is, on the level of all-time great sports commentators, him, Mauro Ranallo. On the football side, who's even of their standard? Probably no one, to be honest. It's probably those two are the best, at least in combat sports. I know some jabroni's going to tell me this guy in boxing. I don't care. All right? But incredible call from Anik, obviously, for that knockout. I do not need to remind you of it and of the timing of it. What I do need to remind you of, though, is that second fight. Obviously, they fought a few years ago in Usman's full debut in the UFC. Obviously, won the Ultimate Fighter. His debut fight was against Leon Edwards. Now, that first fight, we can kind of sort of disregard. Leon was only just fresh into the UFC. I think it was his second fight. It was against Usman. So we have to really sort of focus on that second fight. And that's sort of what intel we have. Because they haven't fought in between these two fights. Of course they haven't. That'd be insane. But they sort of stand, I think, as the clear number 1 and 2 of the welterweight division. They are the two best fighters in that division currently, based off of 1, their skill, and 2, their records. And it feels a bit strange, but it feels like it's been a weirdly underhyped fight. But we persevere. Now, let's talk about that second fight. There seems to be this narrative around it that Kamaru was comfortably winning this fight. And I've got to say, yeah, he was winning the fight. But I think comfortably is it's a bit of a strange one to use. First round, I think everyone can admit, went to Leon. Second round went to Kamaru, but it was close, it was competitive, and then rounds 3 and 4, Kamaru won quite comfortably. And then round 5, leading up to the knockout, Edwards was winning the rounds. He was winning the rounds, I think. Or was he winning a round, or was Usman not really engaging? So, I think that there are things that we can regard and disregard about that fight. And the thing that I think mostly stood out to me was that, that I think we have to disregard is kind of Leon's performance. It was noted mostly after the fight, but that card was fought at altitude in Salt Lake City in Utah. And, Leon went out there 3 weeks before the fight to acclimatise, but apparently that's not enough. Apparently it should be about 5 weeks before the fight where he could have really fully acclimatised to it. And you're facing a guy who trains at altitude. Now, if you're fighting at sea level, which is what they will be fighting at, and I know the memes are starting, yes, sea level Kane, etc., etc. But let's actually just take that into consideration. What will that do for this fight? Well, Usman trains at altitude, and now he's fighting at sea level, so obviously he probably will still have an advantage in the cardio, but it doesn't mean that Leon's cardio will be compromised in the same way. So, that is a factor that we have to sort of rule out of that that second fight. And I also think we have to factor in about that fight, which is a knockout. Now, obviously there are many ways you can factor that in. How does that affect Kamaru, mentally and physically? How does that affect Edwards? Because that's a move that he landed in most of his fight. It's the Robert Whittaker 1-2 step through high kick that he lands on everyone. We all know he does it, but he lands it on everyone and seems to rock most of them. Leon throws that a lot. And I think there could be this thing now where people think this is the kill shot because, it was the moment. He did catch him in the 5th round. How many guys get finished in the 5th round like that? But if you look at Leon's record, actual knockouts, he's got the Seth Brzezinski one, which was the 7th fastest finish in the history of the UFC, 8 seconds into the 1st round. And then, what else has he got in the UFC? Peter Sabota from ground and pound. And that was with 1 second to go of the 3rd. It was about as late as it gets. So yeah, there's some interesting things that we need to consider in that of is Leon really a finisher? To be honest, no, he's not. But he landed that head kick. But I think this is really the first one where you had the guy leaning into it in the way that Usman did, that sort of Cormier lean. And rewatching that second fight, I think there are way more chances for Leon to land that kick or to land on Usman making that move. Because Usman, every time that there was a shot that was thrown low, he was grabbing down it, he was sweeping his hand down, and obviously that is a potential setup. It's just okay, I'm throwing the leg kick, or I'm throwing the kick without hands to hide it, and he could then go high. You also have the thing of throwing a kick to the body, which Usman was sort of parrying with his rear hands, trying to catch, which again is, taking your defense away from your head, which could then open stuff up for Leon. And then there is also the 1-2 head kick behind it. Now, what could be interesting there is, what if Leon goes to throw that 1-2, Usman thinks the head kick is coming behind it, but in fact it isn't, and it is just a 1-2 down the middle. Because something about Usman with his striking is that he'll sort of step through with his jab, but he leaves this really sort of wide avenue sort of between his hands that people like Leon probably could land through the middle. So that I think will be an interesting adjustment to see from there. Because when I think about the adjustments that need to be made in this fight, I think Leon obviously has to make some, and I think Usman has to make some as well. But it's not that he has to add anything. I think if he wins this, I think he has to take away from what he was doing in that second fight. I think he needs to do less of the stuff that was going to get him in trouble, which is staying on the feet. Because if this stays on the feet, if this is a kickboxing match for more than half of it, Leon's going to win that. Now, I know what you're potentially thinking is that, but, Kamaru was beating Leon up against the fence. And again, I will cite the altitude element to that, but that is something that Leon must factor, because Leon did at times get caught up along the fence a lot of the time, and he wasn't able to use any footwork to get out of there. And he brings his hands up right next to his head. It's basically just this wall. It's like this shield, which then allows Usman to then throw hooks around the side, hooks to the body, and then dive in on takedowns from there. Leon can't do that. He needs to stay off the fence. He needs to use his footwork to angle off, create space, and I would use kicks to the body from there, mainly with the rear leg from the southpaw position. That would be the move that Leon has to do. I think Usman, realistically, cannot wrestle Leon Edwards for 25 minutes. He can't wrestle him fully for 25 minutes. What he can do is wrestle him for 15 minutes and win 3 rounds and take a 48-47, which is what I felt like he was heading towards before that knockout in the 5th round of the last fight. To me, that was quite clearly going to head towards a 48-47 for Usman. So, tell me if you think I'm wrong. Drop into the comments and tell me what I'm missing there. And there's just another thing with Usman, which is that what do we know about MMA? We know that when guys get to a certain age with certain issues, things start to fall off. And 35 at welterweight, that's getting up there, man. That's getting up there. And for a guy who we know has bad knees, like his knees are absolutely jacked. Like he can't run on... He has to run on grass if he is going to run. In fact, he can't even walk on concrete. He has to walk on grass. But he can't run. He can only do swimming in the elliptical. He has got incredible cardio, obviously. And again, I think training at altitude helps with that. But the thing is that we don't know that these guys are going to fall off until they actually do it. And that's something that I think has to be considered with Usman. Like, I think about the Anderson Silva when he lost to Weidman. It was like, it was a fluke knockout. Anderson wasn't taking it seriously. But he got slept. And in the rematch, Weidman, before the leg break, he was beating him up. Now, I'm not expecting Usman to fall off like Anderson did in that second Weidman fight. But I'm not expecting the Kamaru Usman of the Gilbert Burns fight. I'm not expecting the Kamaru Usman of the Masvidal fights or the Usman of the Covington fights. I think this is still going to be a reduced Kamaru Usman. I just think that even in a victory, I don't think this is going to be a classic Usman win. And I do think that age is going to catch up with him in this fight and in the next one, depending on what that is. I think also, if Leon is going to make an adjustment and add anything, the thing that popped into my mind is that sort of Robert Whittaker style blitz in sort of like knee strike. The one where he sort of like blitzes in with like a hyper-extending kick to the knee. Like, just land some shots to those knees. Like, try and like really damage them. Sort of obliques. If you're going to get squared up, throw obliques. Obviously, don't do it up against the fence, like leaning against the fence, throwing an oblique. You're going to be off balance. You can dive in for a takedown. You're not going to be secure in that kick. Remember when Usman lost to Edwards? He was the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world. And I don't think there was much debate. Actually, no, I was starting to lean towards Volk. I was leaning towards Volk. I think after that Holloway fight, I was like, yeah, Volk I think is the best. In fact, I did say that. You know what? Fuck it. Even if I didn't say that, I'm saying it now. Volk was #1. But, hey-ho. And I think it's fair enough if you're going to be like, Kamaru Usman, he's just going to come back. He hit with one shot. That's fine. But I remember after we recorded our preview the last time these two fought, me and Tom stayed on the line and we talked for like another 20 minutes, half an hour. And we both came to this conclusion that, like, man, I should have picked Leon. We both said it. We should have picked Leon. And like, listeners, there's nothing worse in life than having regrets. And well, there are many things in life worse than having regrets, but when it comes to something as trivial as this, regretting a pick like that, it can stay with you. And I'd rather pick the guy who I kind of want to win when it's this close of a fight. If I think it can be as close as it can be, like, I think that this can be a very close fight. Listeners, I've got to do it. Leon Edwards by decision. Now, I'll get to the co-main. I will get to Tom's picks, but I will get to them after I've gone through the rest of the main card picks. And let's go to this co-main event, Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. And speaking of aging, I think we might see a bit of this in this fight. There's the obvious technical ability that Fiziev has over Gaethje. I mean, shot selection, ability to change game plan within a fight, and ability to change stance that Gaethje doesn't really engage with, multiple tools and weapons that Fiziev has over Gaethje. And I think Fiziev does have an advantage, a great advantage over Gaethje. And I think this first round could be carnage, because I think Gaethje will just wade in and create this battle. And if Fiziev is heavy on that front leg, Gaethje will chop at that front leg. Obviously, chopping at the front leg opens you up then to shots up top, particularly from a straight or a jab, as you were having to come from like a long way in, so like a hook probably wouldn't land. But I digress. I do think that this first round will be carnage. Excuse me. There's an interesting thing I want to pick up on here, is that, like, I think this fight it could be quite a delicate one in terms of the balance of it. Because I think Fiziev could pull away. Like, he could pull away after the second round, but he has shown that he's got a bit of a gas tank problem, as highlighted in the Bobby Green fight. Bobby Green absolutely put it on him in that third round. It's a close fight. I think Green outstruck him in all 3 rounds. I'll just bring the stats up just to double check that. But I believe Green outstruck him in all 3 rounds. But again, it was the quality of Fiziev's work that really did for Green. Green outstruck him in all 3 rounds. But as I said, Fiziev's work there was tremendous. Also in Fiziev's favour, he's one of the few fighters that can actually throw more than 1 shot in a row, or 2 shots, so he can throw 3-4 shot combos. I think of that finish of Moicano, body, head combo that he landed. It was superb. I think Gaethje really needs to chop away at him, get the mobility down, because Gaethje has such strong power, like real weighed in, heavy hands. And I do really believe that he can just like attritionally wear down on Fiziev. I think the thing that I've picked up on is in his last 2 fights that Gaethje's been badly rocked by Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira in the first round. Like that one against Chandler just exploded and hit Gaethje with a huge shot and rocked him, and he was sort of like all wobbly and all over the place and was sort of trying to get out of it and protect himself as best he could, but it took him a while to recover. And in the Charles fight, it was crazy exchanges. I love that fight, but crazy exchanges. Charles was just sat in the pocket and he was calm and collected and landed a beautiful right straight which dropped Gaethje, and then the finishing submission attacks came from there. Do you really think that Fiziev won't land on Gaethje to such a degree that he won't knock him down? And let's also face the facts with Gaethje. Much like Usman, there's a lot of wear on that clock, a lot of time, a lot of tape on the man as well. 34 years old, at lightweight, and you fought your entire career like this, and you've said that this is how you want to fight. No matter what, you're not going to fall back on the wrestling. You're just going to keep going until the wheels fall off. Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. But I want to cite the fight which is coming into my mind, which is Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, where the wheels fell off. and a guy aged overnight. Fiziev by knockout for me. Oh, weren't expecting that. Now, I'm a bit disappointed Tom's not here because, Tom, sorry to break kayfabe here, listeners, but Tom lives in Iceland, and Iceland's own Gunnar Nelson is back, and he's facing Bryan Barberena, a boy that Tom is trying to force onto me because I picked him to beat Rafael dos Anjos. I think, again, I don't want to just cite age as a reason for picking guys, but, Barberena has got a bit of a thing of, beating up on old dudes. Robbie Lawler and Matt Brown, guys who, have Jake Ellenberger, guys where it's just like, they're a bit past their peaks and whatever else. And I have this weird fear with Gunnar Nelson. He came back after losing to Gilbert Burns and Leon Edwards. He took 3 years off and fought Takeshi Saito and won a unanimous decision against a guy who couldn't really wrestle. Now, Barberena did get out-wrestled by Rafael dos Anjos in his last fight. But I think, I just have worries about Gunnar Nelson. He's pulled out of a lot of fights. He's had a lot of fights cancelled on him. This was supposed to be D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez. Just to let you know, I would definitely have picked Daniel Rodriguez over Gunnar Nelson. But I just have a slight fear here that, again, Barberena's just going to walk forward and engage with Gunnar Nelson here, and I don't think Gunnar Nelson really has the stand-up power to stop Barberena, and I don't know if he has the wrestling credentials. He's definitely got the grappling credentials to finish Barberena, but I think he's going to have to maybe pull some tricky stuff from clinch, maybe try and get into a single leg and get into back attacks from there. I'm sorry, I totally forgot about this. That was something I needed to bring up about the main event as a potential issue for Leon, is that he gives his back away a lot, and he gave his back away a lot to Kamaru. Sorry, I will get back to Gunnar Nelson versus Bryan Barberena, but obviously he doesn't stir me in the same way as that main event does. And he gave his back away a lot to Kamaru Usman. If you're going to add a wrinkle to Usman's game, it would be just take a back attack, get back attacks in there, take the back and work from there. But he tends not to like to do that. He likes to be chest to chest, break your posture down from there. Anyway, I still pick Leon by decision. And yeah, when I think of guys that Gunnar Nelson has lost to, it tends to be guys that can throw. I don't know. They're just better on the feet than him, and Ponzinibbio, Edwards, and Burns. One of Leon's big issues is that he's sort of you go, I go, which can sort of go in sort of guys like Gunnar Nelson's favour. I think also Gunnar's sort of karate stance, his long stance, just slightly worry for him of is he just going to blitz in on Barberena? I mean, if he does that sort of karate stance and blitzes in and then uses that to duck underneath to sort of get to a takedown, then I think Nelson can win rounds off Barberena. But if he gets stuck up against the fence wrestling Barberena, he's quite a small welterweight. I don't think he cuts anything to get to 170. And if you're facing a guy like Barberena up against the fence and don't have that strength to sort of pull him down, I think there could be a bit of an issue for Gunnar Nelson. And I think there actually might be, and that's why I've gone for a Bryan Barberena decision. I just think the volume is just going to get to Gunnar Nelson. I think, he just hasn't developed in the way that we would want. I think his striking is still wide open. He leaves and he just pauses a lot. I think his sort of rear hand always sort of drops. It's. I think there are openings for Barberena to catch him. I know that Tom is probably listening to this and absolutely guffawing, because I can guarantee he's picked Gunnar Nelson. He's got a weird hatred for Bryan Barberena. I don't want to get into it too much. But yeah, Bryan Barberena by decision. Right. Jennifer Maia versus Casey O'Neill. Maia, 20 wins, 9 defeats. Compared to Casey O'Neill's 9 victories, no defeats. Now, Casey O'Neill, the one fight of hers that I found I don't know how to describe it, because she's got a really good finishing record, but it's against women that tend not to have much grappling. Antonina Shevchenko's not particularly impressive, but it's the Roxanne Modafferi one where it was put as a split decision, but that was quite clearly not. I mean, Modafferi got absolutely mushed by O'Neal on the feet. 229 strikes to 120. Sorry, 229 significant strikes to 120. I mean, it was just, it was a lot of damage that O'Neal was handing out, mostly to the head and at distance. I think part of the issue might be for O'Neal here is the fact that Jennifer Maia, as witnessed in a title fight with Valentina Shevchenko, not a bad grappler. Not a bad grappler at all. But the problem was that she was facing Valentina Shevchenko, who is someone that gets taken down and then struggled on the feet. And Casey O'Neal has pretty good grappling and good volume. And you can see where I'm going, listeners. Casey O'Neal by decision here. I think Maia's striking has improved. I thought she did fairly well early on against Manon Fiorot. Decision loss for Maia. But the Marina Moroz fight, when she came back, much improved from there. Again, it's real issue with some of these fighters is the inability to throw more than 2 shots. And Maia actually did throw more than 2 shots and actually angled off in that fight. And so it was much improved, but I just think O'Neal does have the cleaner, better striking and an actual finishing ability that Maia just doesn't have unless it gets to the ground. And I think O'Neal can keep it standing. If it does stay standing, I think there's no way that O'Neal doesn't win that. And that's what I've gone for, Casey O'Neal by decision. Now, this fight here, Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze, fascinating one, in that these guys have similarities. Excuse me one second, I'm just taking a sip of my beer. They have similarities in terms of their intensity. Both well-rounded. Marvin Vettori, that's an issue that we've talked about with him before. It's an issue and a positive, which is that he's really well-rounded, but he just doesn't have that standout thing. Like, everything's like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. He's got good striking, good wrestling, good grappling, good cardio. That tends to be like his biggest weapon is his cardio, because his just output is so high. And also he's got a very good chin. Like a really, really good chin. I mean, you'd hope so with a head that size. But, you saw it in the Paulo Costa fight, which is that he just walked forward and just tired him out. And against, the better opposition at middleweight, the Jack Hermanson fight, the Kevin Holland fight, as is the Paulo Costa one, it was just the walking forward and sort of tiring them out. He gets finishes over guys like Carl Roberson. That's about it, actually. Is that his only finish in the UFC? No, Alberto Uda. It's got a lot of, decisions on there, and he just doesn't really have that sort of finishing ability. Whereas Roman Dolidze he's very well-rounded, but he can also crack, the finish of, Carl Dorcas, where he, kneed him, where he got, the knee up really high at an awkward angle twice. The first one, clearly, did for Dorcas, and then the second one, absolutely flattened him. And then the Phil Hawes one with the hooks, where he, knocked him down. He was clearly knocked out, but the fight kept going. And Dolidze was sort of, looking at the ref going, all right, fine, I'll keep going. Got back up, and then mushed him against the fence again. And then the finisher, Hermanson, he's got, pause you power. He's got finishing power as well as being well-rounded. This is a real test to see how far that power will go against someone like Vettori, who is very hittable, who has a very sort of herky-jerky sort of, all sort of feints and twitches sort of style. and then sort of like a pumping jab out at you. But it's very linear. It's very forward. It's always backwards and forwards. There's not enough side to side and angling off. Whereas Dolidze does do that. Dolidze does, though, give time away in his fights. You know, and I think that could be a way in for Vettori, is like if he can set the tempo of the fight. Yeah, we saw it with Piotr Jan, is that if you try and like work off of like, okay, I'll figure out my opponent's rhythms and then work from there. You saw that in the Merab fight, which is just like, okay, I figured out his rhythms, but I've got no way of throwing anything. Could that become an issue with Vettori? I mean, probably not, because it's middleweight and it's not a great division. So there's that side of it. The other side is that like, yeah, obviously Vettori's fought Adesanya twice, and Adesanya is a much better kickboxer than Dolidze will ever be. But Dolidze's just power is just, I want to see what the window is of that power. Like, if he can rock Vettori, like, that would be major. Like, not even Paulo Costa did that. I think Dolidze has more tools on the feet, and I think he has more tools in terms of submission attacks as well. I just think that Vettori could neutralise him up against the fence, take time away up against the fence. But I believe in Roman Dolidze. Roman Dolidze by decision. Now, listeners, I am going to go to Tom's email. He emailed me his picks, and I'm pretty sure I could just guess what his picks are off the top of my head, and I can guarantee it's pretty different to what I've just chosen. Okay, let's look at the first one. Usman by decision. Of course he's gone for Usman by decision. Now, this is Tom all over. I'm just going to ignore what happened before. I'm going to ignore any, like, past is prologue sort of thing to, you know, look at that. The history of combat sports. And I'm just going to ignore that last fight even happened. That's classic Tom. All over Usman by decision. I get it, though. I mean, Christ almighty. I mean, me picking Edwards is like, you know, 51% to 49% lean. So it's not like it's a confident pick of me picking Leon. But I picked Leon nonetheless. And you know what? I respect that pick for Usman by decision. It's a fair pick. Isn't it, listeners? It's a very much a fair pick. Right, let's have a look. Fiziev versus Gaethje. Fiziev by decision. You know, Tom really hates that sort of violence, weight, guard, grip at the top of the lightweight division. Your Poiriers, your Chandlers, your Gaethjes. He wants these new guys coming through. This makes a lot of sense. He would definitely pick up onto that narrative, and a fair play to him. I think he probably would mention the more varied attacks of Fiziev, and that would be the advantages that you would have over Gaethje. What did I pick? Did I pick Fiziev by knockout? Yeah, I did, didn't I? I can't remember. Yeah, Fiziev by knockout. So that's a slight difference there. Let's have a look at Gunnar Nelson versus Barberena. I know he's picked Gunnar Nelson. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. What's he picked here? Yeah, Nelson by submission. Okay, thank you so much, Tom. You've fallen into my trap. You ain't taking Brian Barberena down, okay? Barberena is not my boy. He is not my boy. But I knew you'd pick Gunnar Nelson by submission. Right, let's have a look. Jennifer Maia versus Casey O'Neill. What's Tom gone for here? O'Neill by decision. Sensible choice. Sensible choice. It's women's MMA. How many finishes are there really going to be? Although O'Neill is a finisher. Now, Vettori versus Dolidze is about to come up, and I can guarantee he's picked Marvin Vettori. Yes, he's picked Marvin Vettori by decision. Of course he has. Of course he has. He loves Marvin Vettori. He's got this weird fixation that he thinks Marvin Vettori is like nearly on the level of Robert Whittaker and Adesanya and Pereira. He just doesn't have that magic, you know, that zhuzh, that je ne sais quoi, if you will. Tom, interesting picks that I will expect you to defend next week when we break down this card. So listeners, let me go through the picks once again. From the bottom up, I've picked Roman Dolidze by decision. Tom has picked Marvin Vettori. We've both picked Casey O'Neill by decision. Tom has picked Gunnar Nelson by submission, and I've picked Brian Barberena by decision. Tom has picked Fiziev by decision. I've picked Fiziev by knockout, if I remember correctly. If I said decision earlier in the recording, then that's the one I have to go for, but I think I had to pick knockout. And then in the main event, I have picked Leon Edwards to retain by decision, whereas Tom has picked Kamaru Usman to win the title back by decision. He's going to say he's going to wrestle him for 25 minutes. That would be Tom's way of looking at that. Bless him. Let's take a quick look at the prelims. Listen, Jack Shaw versus Makwan Amirkhani. Amirkhani's got about 3 minutes of cardio, and I'm expecting Jack Shaw just to take over from there. That's his debut at featherweight. Fantastic. Beat Amirkhani, getting those rankings, get him moving up there, okay? There's some tremendous fights I want to see Jack Shaw have at featherweight. And no offence to him, but Makwan Amirkhani's not one of them. Mohamed Mokaev versus Rafael Fiziev. I think Mokaev now really needs to start learning how to use ground and pound, because he out-grapples these guys and gets into brilliant positions. And I know that with flyweight, it's hard to get guys down held in positions for a long time to get substantial ground and pound out. But Mokaev needs to start doing that, because he can't just keep riding these guys out for a decision. I know that the fans will still be on his side, but if it's every time just wrestling guys without much else, he's going to start to hit a wall further up the division. Needs to start putting a bit more out there. And he's so experienced as well. Someone at such a young age. But yeah, I'd like to see just a little bit more from Mokaev now. I know he's only been in the company for a year, but I'd just like to see just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And wow, what else can I say? But our boy Jai Herbert is back facing Ludovic Klein. That will be a banger. That will be a banger for sure. Very into that. I hope that we get first round Herbert versus Topuria rather than the entire 15 minutes of Kyle Nelson versus Jai Herbert, where Herbert just grappled him. Weird one as well. Veronica Hardy faces Juliana Miller. I honestly, listeners, I know this sounds bad, but stick your £5 on Juliana Miller on that one. I just listening to Hardy talk about the amount of concussions that she had in training and having to take time off to recover for them, and man, that's a long time off. And unless you come out with something particularly brilliant, then I do worry for you, because last time she was there, didn't look too great, I must say. But yes, sorry to end on a depressing note. Let's end on an up note, though. Leon Edwards, Birmingham's second favourite son. Who is their number one son, I hear you ask? Well, there are many potential answers to that. Hold on, let me type in famous people from Birmingham. Famous people from Birmingham. Tremendous. Let's have a look. Well, you've got John Cadbury, who founded Cadbury's Chocolates, and who else have you got there? Ozzy Osbourne, of course. J.R.R. Tolkien. No, they're not Birmingham's number one son. It is, of course, Mike Skinner. Of the Streets. Yeah. What's the best Streets album? Listeners, answer that question for me. It's original pirate material. Of course it is. So we're going to finish with The Streets. What should we have from original pirate material? What should we have from there? You know what? Let's finish with Geezers Need Excitement, because that's just some of his best work. That's just some of his best work, isn't it? Hold on, let's have a look. What's my favourite line in Geezers Need Excitement? There's the Jackie Chan line. What's the Jackie Chan line that I love? Hold on. What was it? Behind the counter they look nervous, but carry on cutting the finest cuts of chicken from the big spinning stick. Oh my god, yes. So mash his head up and your girl's now fed up. But stop to think, and it's never going to be the Jackie Chan scene it could have been to end up. Oh my word. Sorry, I butchered that. Listen to Mike Skinner do it, not me. Listeners, we'll be back next week. I've gone nearly 40 minutes. Common sense. Anyway, simple common sense. Good night. Excitement. If their lives don't provide them, this they incite violence. Common sense. Simple common sense. Out the club about 3 to the takeaway. The shit in a tray merchants. Shop's got a special perchant for the disorderly. Geezers looking ordinary and a few looking leery. Chips fly round to the sound of the latest chart entry. An incendiary, waiting to blast. No arm with a contest, who can throw the furthest? Behind the counter they look nervous, but
Carry on cutting the finest cuts of chicken from the big spinning stick. Then overflies a chip, flips and hits you on the back. You spin round on the attack. Fuck you playing at. He looks like a Cheshire cat, almost falls down. Your frowns and Superman eye lasers don't even register. By now you wanna lever this twat, and forever you're gonna regret that, your choice of path. So mash his head up and your girl's now fed up. But stop to think and it's never gonna be the Jackie Chan scene it could have been to end up. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense. So you owe someone money subbing scunny. Best pay me Billy, no worries. 150 on Sunday, but in some way that turns into Wednesday. Then goes straight to pay on a hazy evening in the local bar cafe. What a way, what a way. Just to recap for those at the back, this is everyday tit for tat. You owe your dealer and can't pay back fee. Suddenly he's the baddie, so you tell your mates you could have him anyway, to look geese, but he's a shady fuck. Beamer 3 Series, lock, stock and 2 fat fucks backing him up. Can't convey enough of his desire for the paper stuff. In a blunt fashion, Billy's angry with a passion. So please just accept it ain't happening, and go back to your runnings, cause you might get yourself in trouble one of these days. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense. Get hold of this bird after pub closing hours. Would your girl like this? No, don't think so somehow. In the winter showers, but she'll never know and your face will never show shit. This is how goes it. Besides, she was well fit, and who could resist? Move up to the next place, a smooth club to flex bass, beats and your best mates all down. Nice sounds, Smirnoff ice rounds. MCs clowning, rude boys frowning. Everything's sweet, everything's tucked in, and round here we're all downing. But all of a sudden though, just through the smoke, it's your bird laughing and joking with a bloke. Ain't just that either, as she moves closer, initiating what looks like they're lovers. He's tonguing her, all rage sweeps up through your torso. You're more so ready to go over and show him who's man, football fan style. Leave it in the can for a while, cause even as they smile, you've still got choices. Don't listen to them voices. At the end of the day, you may just to cause this, so leave the forces. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense.